The preeminent researcher in ufology, Moulton Howe, tells us that after 28 years of research that we can no longer afford to ignore the fact that aliens have been visiting and working with Earth and its species for millennia. She believes the cover-up is inspired by the power elite's greed to foist outdated and environmentally damaging fossil fuel-based technologies upon us when alien technologies may hold the key to our future recovery of planet Earth. Would it be fair to say that you're one of the few people out there that can really take on the X-Files and know what this means and be able to help decipher this information?
It was, in fact, the calls from Chris Carter in that office in the Real X-Files TV series coming to me for material on all of the various subjects that I was investigating, including animal mutilations, human abductions, crop circles, and so forth, that as their series went on television, and I had reached a point by 1999 where I was so tired of the blocks and the no's and no, we will not do that subject in a book, we will not do that subject on television, that it was what inspired me to want to do a news website that would be science and environment based. That's where I've always done my investigative journalism, but I could add Real X-Files, my tip to Chris Carter and the Real X-Files, and do it in the context of hard forensic evidence and going after the hard physical data and putting it in the context of science and environment to help audiences realize we are dealing with real phenomenon. This is not paranormal. This is not something that is in a superstition or a mythology. We have actual non-human intelligences interacting with this planet, from people that I've talked to in the government over 28 years who have talked to me largely off the record. The implication is that we're dealing with one or more non-human intelligences that have been interacting with the planet for millennia. It did not start in 1947. It did not start in 1847. It's been going on for a very long time. And the big question is why, in the 1940s, did it seem to shift gears into a kind of perpetual presence of the discs, the cylinders, and these craft that were being reported, followed by, in 1961, at least the first documented case of Betty and Barney Hill as the first publicly reported human abduction syndrome. And throughout that whole period, going back really to the beginning of the 20th century, were all of the worldwide animal mutilations and what was common to both. In the animal mutilations, every country of the world has had them. There have been all of these eyewitness reports about beams of light, mysterious lights. Some farmers have told me that they have seen animals rise in beams of light or be lowered in beams of light. Eyewitness testimony. Jump over to the human abduction syndrome and you have lights, mysterious lights, beams of light. Some people think that they've seen a human or two rise in these beams of light. It suggests the same kind of lifting technology is being used in the animals and then in the humans, but the difference is humans are returned. They have missing time. They cannot remember how they got from point A to point B, driving in a car, walking in their yard, something has happened. But they are returned, perhaps with trauma, but otherwise they're all right. But the animals are returned, dead, and with the same pattern of excisions, bloodless, and no tracks around them. And when I started trying to get to the bottom of the worldwide animal mutilation mystery, September of '79, it was law enforcement who were saying, Linda, we know it's not predator, we know it's not disease, and we know it's not satanic cults. We're dealing with creatures from outer space. That is what law enforcement was telling me. But it took 8 or 9 weeks of all of these discussions with law enforcement to get one to go on the record with the camera running, and that was Lou Girotto. He was in the district attorney's office in Trinidad. He had been assigned to investigate animal mutilations. And it was Lou Girotto who said, all of the investigators and I, we are convinced we're dealing with creatures not from this planet, and then explain why. And that is how the film, A Strange Harvest, that received an Emmy, and it was like a bomb went off when it was broadcast. That was what pulled the focus of all of the off-the-record comments, was Lou Girotto telling the truth, that we were dealing with a technology that was not human.
And it wasn't so much, I mean, it's interesting because oftentimes the cattle mutilation comes up and people are, oh my God, these beings are barbaric. Look, and then I think of fast food nation and what we do to so many animals every day. But the point is that it's done in such a mysterious fashion that it's really an indication something else is happening.
Right.
It's not so much the barbarism involved as it is the anomaly.
And I can underscore what you're saying with one example. Several times veterinarians have been called into a field to do a necropsy by a sheriff. And one of those was in Sterling, Colorado, in the 70s. And when the veterinarian opened up this mutilated cow, there was no heart, there was no blood inside of the perfectly intact pericardium, that clear membrane that goes around your heart, a horse's heart. It's just it's what goes around hearts. And for the veterinarian to find, this is the size of a full-grown cow's heart, it's huge.
Right.
No tissue, no clotted blood, no fluid. And he said there was a half teaspoon of something that was sort of clear and pink, and that was it in that entire pericardium. And the sheriff, Tex Graves, he said, that veterinarian looked at me and said, don't you ever call me out in another one of these. I am not going to stand up in front of reporters and tell them I have no idea how anyone would do this.
Right, right. So this is something that's been documented for a while. Benny and Barney Hill, which is a fascinating case because it was actually, they went through regression therapy. They went through hypnosis,
Right.
essentially.
With
to
an
bring the
expert.
With an expert,
Yeah.
to bring this information back as to their abduction. And the common themes throughout the abductions from that time forward, from 1961 forward, are, you tell us. I know there are certain types of beings, certain
Yes.
pictures and so forth that take place.
If you took 61 as the beginning point of Betty and Barney Hill in what was not then even, didn't even have a name, it was that this couple was reporting strange events and they got home late. And now, as we talk in 2007, with the 40-some years, the name that got put on this syndrome, because so many hundreds, if not thousands of people around the world were reporting the same kind of events, was the human abduction syndrome. And it was called syndrome because there were various categories. There would be people asleep at night, and then they're waked. And they can be waked into paralysis, meaning they know that they're conscious but they can't move. Or they awake and they can move, and what they're seeing are these, the 3-foot grayish with the big black eyes. And then there is usually a panoply of different descriptions that either they're conscious of being moved in the air out of their house, moved through windows out of their house or their room, lifted out of cars. Many people have described seeing some part of their second body go through car windows, and then they're into an abduction. One case, the woman said, I know that I looked at my speedometer because I was worried about speeding, and I know that the speedometer said it was 65. And then it blurred, and then the needle went, I was doing 40. She said, how could I be looking at my speedometer at 65 and then it's 40? That was her only clue. It haunted her. Something had happened on the road. And that shows that whether it is something that is aggressive and up front in your face in your bedroom, or as subtle as a needle on a speedometer that changes in front of your eyes, that the common denominator is everybody gets to some place that they're headed, either too late and they know that they have missing time, or from the bedrooms they know that they waked up and they don't know what happened. And then there are people like Jim Sparks, that I think is one of the more important abduction cases, in which for approximately 13 years over a span, he was taken on a regular basis, totally conscious. It was as if the intent of the non-humans was to keep him conscious and to go through essentially a school to learn non-human symbols. And what is so intriguing to me, after 28 years ago, I started trying to get to the bottom of animal mutilations that took me through law enforcement to the concept that creatures from outer space were doing the mutilations, and then realizing that the human abduction syndrome was linked to some sort of interaction with non-humans, to crop formations, to it all. And that after 28 years, it is like a pointillisme painting from France, in which there are 2,000 dots. And when you stand back from those 2,000 dots, you have a kind of a pattern. But if you go to every single dot, which is every individual case, you do not have truth. You have experiences in which something much bigger is doing a very large interaction with human beings, leaving human beings without answers. And as an investigative reporter, looking at this bigger picture, you realize that whatever it is, it does not want us to understand what it is doing. And right now in 2007, what I intuitively sense is that perhaps the gear is shifting again, where there are too many frustrated people, there are too many angry military people. They know we're dealing with non-human entities that break down into several categories. And the fact that governments, whether for good reasons or bad reasons, have chosen to have policies of denial in the interests of national security, to keep this entirely away from the taxpayers, from the media, from everyone, is, in the long run, is a huge mistake. I think everybody's beginning to realize you can't build and sustain a planet that is lying about something that is interacting with the citizenry and keep that lie going. To perpetuate what? To perpetuate the greed power syndrome so that the stock market doesn't collapse?
To protect energy sources from new technologies being introduced?
All of this is now at a point where there's a sense that there has to be a seismic event. Something has to now affect this whole planet to allow the release, just like the San Andreas Fault. It has been pushing with so many lies for so long, and that it has to release. And it may be unpleasant for some people, but I think that we've reached a point of what some people call tough love. The planet, every human deserves the same facts and information that the power greed people have. To have it otherwise is for us to continue to live on a planet that is going to become more and more disconnected, more and more master-slave, and an illusion of which we're perpetuating mythology. We're not dealing with the reality of the universe. And how are we ever going to expand from this earth, whether we go to Mars or beyond, and still keep insisting to this planet that this is the only planet in this vast universe that
with
has
intelligent life? Yeah, that's the only insanity, really, is that anyone thinks that that could still even be a possibility. So most people are savvy. When they do these various polls here and there, it shows that certainly the majority of people think we are not the only intelligent life in the universe. Yet, as you say, this power/greed structure that's holding everything down has a firm grip on us. How do you see that cracking? Well, first of all, off camera, you told me something I found very interesting. Earthfiles.com, your site, you actually have subscribers from Congress.
That's
now,
right,
can
in
you talk
Washington.
about where you're seeing the cracks?
I think it's been both reinforcing and encouraging that when I look at how the subscriber base to my news website, earthfiles.com, has expanded, that I realize that there are subscriptions from congressional offices. There are subscriptions from all kinds of professional people, from engineering to astronomy. And that means that they may be signing up for the Pure Science and the Pure Environment reports at Earthfiles, which there are considerable numbers. But it means also that there's a high likelihood that they want to read the Real X-Files, which is focused around these subjects of human abductions, animal mutilations, crop formations. There's a whole panoply, orbs, mysterious plasmas. There is so much that is there and can be physically measured, and it's not understood. To realize that for perhaps the first time in my professional life, where working inside of television stations, I had to do what management would allow. And then when I decide independently to start a news website because of the wonderful internet, and that I can then focus on what I think is important, using still journalistic rules about let's have some eyewitnesses and try to get physical evidence, but nevertheless, stories that fall into the politically unacceptable category in many cases, and then finding that there are so many professional people who are contacting me to either report off the record their own experiences, their own firsthand knowledge with the government, with military, with science, and in some cases agreeing to go on the record. This is I think, a sign of hope. There is great frustration in the military, there is great frustration by scientists, by bureaucrats, all feeling that we are now living in a country that has become a straitjacket. And they hate it.
It's good to hear that. I mean, we know we do, and everybody here does, but I keep receiving the same word increasingly, whether it's military, Pentagon, CIA. There are many people that are very beyond frustrated.
That's right.
Are really desperate to start changing the system from within, and they're in positions of power.
That's right. How do you break an egg that has become this strange fascist nation pretending to be a democracy? How do you break it and put it back together again into anything that would be recognizable and wanted by the very people who still live here, who know everything is wrong?
Right. So when you look at this, as you say, it's kind of a pointillistic painting, and you take these dots and you start connecting them into a portrait or a mosaic. What are you starting to see emerging from all of this in terms of the way forward now?
Whether it is going to be a NASA government announcement that we have found life on Mars, I don't care if it's bacteria. I think they're trying to set the stage soon. We're going to find life somewhere. And once the government can embrace, oh, there's life on Mars, life in Europa, life detected in another planet, then I think they feel like we can open the box to other life here. So I keep waiting for those headlines. I think that our government wants the discovery of other life to come as a cushion shot through another place.
Gotcha. Now, what about the actual beings themselves? What indications are you getting from the abductee experience and what you're seeing as maybe that part of the portrait? What are their agendas? How do they play into it?
What makes me nervous about the non-humans is that every single one of them seem to choose secrecy and deception, just like our own government, to continue their operations here. Why is it that the non-humans, who could so easily pull the rug out from under the policies of denial by our government or any other government, why do they not choose to make themselves public? We are here, we do not want you to have nuclear war. We do not want you to destroy the rainforest. Do you not understand those are the lungs of the planet? Do you not understand that if you keep living the way you are, you will not have any air to breathe? Statements like that coming from a non-human, whether it's all television sets around the world or however they wanted to do it, I cannot imagine anyone anywhere on this earth panicking if that is the true agenda and the true goal.
For more of Linda's information on the environment, alien technology, and more, just click on the link below to go to her site and check into her library of information. Until next time, thanks for watching CMN.